Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson, and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast for intermediate to advanced level learners of English. What happened in 2022? How much do you remember about the previous year? Today, I'm going to go through every major event that occurred in 2022. Listen, learn, and practice your English. You can find a full transcript of this episode available over on the Thinking in English blog. Click the link in the description. While you're in the description, take a look at my Instagram page and my YouTube channel. Both keep growing and publishing excellent content every day. Leave a like, a rating and review wherever you are right now. And subscribe to my Patreon page for a weekly conversation club. Here is today's episode. Just quickly before I start, I want to mention that I have recorded episodes on around half of the events I'm going to mention in this episode. I'll link everything in the transcript, so go over there to find out more details about these events I'm going to mention. January. The year started on January 1st, when the state funeral for Archbishop Desmond Tutu was held, one of the most influential South Africans and famous anti-apartheid activists. January 5th saw Kazakhstan declare a state of emergency across the country. 164 people died after protests erupted. People were furious at increases in fuel prices and at the government. On January 6th, Novak Djokovic, the world number one tennis player, had his Australian visa cancelled after lying about his COVID-19 vaccination. He was deported a few days later. The Pacific country of Tonga was hit by a tsunami on January 15th, after the underwater volcano Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai violently erupted. The explosion could be heard all the way in New Zealand. On January 18th, Indonesia voted to move their capital city to the island of Borneo and call it Nusantara. February. Moving on to February, the Winter Olympics officially opened on February 4th in Beijing, China, a city which rarely experiences snowfall. On February 21st, Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized Russian-backed separatists in 2 Ukrainian regions and sent in Russian troops as peacekeepers. A few days later, on February 4th, Putin announced the start of a special military operation in Ukraine to demilitarize the country. Russia invaded Ukraine by land, air, and sea, bombing major cities, but being met with fierce Ukrainian resistance and international anger. By February 27th, the Russian invasion of Ukraine had led to 18 million Ukrainians being displaced, with 4 million refugees leaving the country. March. According to figures from Johns Hopkins released on March 7th, the global total death toll from COVID-19 hit 6 million, and 57% of the world's population was now fully vaccinated. On March 8th, Florida passed a controversial law known as the Don't Say Gay law, which attempted to restrict what teachers could discuss in classrooms. The South Korean elections took place on March 9th, with conservative Yoon Suk-yeol being elected as the new president of South Korea. Coda won Best Film at the Academy Awards on March 27th, but the event was overshadowed by actor Will Smith, who slapped the host Chris Rock. Also on March 27th, China announced that Shanghai would enter a lockdown. 25 million people began COVID-19 testing and quarantining in one of the harshest lockdowns in the world. After months of hard fighting, Russia was forced to retreat from the Ukrainian capital Kyiv on March 29th, after its army was suffering badly. April. On April 1st, the President of Sri Lanka, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, declared a public emergency due to violent protests. The country was experiencing its worst economic crisis since independence. A few days later, on April 4th, Costa Rica elected an economist, Rodrigo Chavez, as their new president. Ketanji Brown Jackson became the first black woman to be chosen as a US Supreme Court judge on April 7th. On April 24th, French President Emmanuel Macron was re-elected, defeating the right-wing candidate Marine Le Pen. And on April 25th, Elon Musk reached a deal with Twitter to buy the company for $44 billion. May started off with an extreme heat wave continuing across north and central India, with the hottest temperatures since records began 122 years ago. Sinn Féin, an Irish Republican party, won the most seats in the Northern Ireland elections on May 5th, the first time they had ever achieved this result. On May 12th, North Korea ordered a national lockdown after apparently announcing the first ever COVID-19 cases in the country. Experts doubt that they were the first cases and feared for the 25 million unvaccinated people in the country. In mid-May, both Finland and Sweden announced they will apply to join NATO following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Both countries had been neutral for decades, Sweden for centuries. June. On June 1st, Turkey officially changed its name to Türkiye internationally. Queen Elizabeth II marked 70 years as British monarch and her Platinum Jubilee, with 4 days of celebrations starting on June 2nd. On June 9th, Thailand became the first Southeast Asian country to legalize cannabis. Colombia elected the country's first leftist president on June 19th, former guerrilla group member Gustavo Petro. In a momentous decision, the US Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade decision on June 24th, ending the constitutional right to an abortion in the USA. On June 25th, Japan recorded its highest ever temperature. I was in Japan and it was ridiculously hot. Bongbong Marcos, the son of former dictator Ferdinand Marcos, became president of the Philippines on June 30th. July. Moving into July, Germany and Nigeria signed an agreement on July 1st to return over 1,000 Benin bronzes back to Nigeria. Sri Lanka announced it had less than 1 day's worth of fuel left in its supplies on July 3rd, forcing them to close schools and stop public transport. On July 6th, 40 government ministers, officials and aides resigned from the British government in just 24 hours. Prime Minister Boris Johnson was forced to announce his resignation a day later. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shockingly assassinated on July 8th, while giving a speech in the city of Nara. Extreme heat waves hit Europe starting around July 19th. Temperatures hit 40 degrees in parts of the UK for the first time ever. Over 1,000 people died in Portugal and 500 people in Spain, and wildfires spread across Spain, France, Italy and Greece. August. US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi became the most senior US politician to visit Taiwan in 25 years at the beginning of August, sparking anger and a strong reaction from China. On August 8th, the FBI searched former US President Donald Trump's home in Florida after accusations he mishandled classified government documents. Inflation kept getting higher in August. The UK inflation rate reached a 40-year high of 10.1% on August 17th. Soon after, the UN announced that 22 million people were now at risk of starvation in the Horn of Africa, after the worst drought in 40 years. Pakistan was hit by massive floods and monsoon rains in late August. On August 28th, the death toll rose to over 1,000 people. September. Liz Truss was chosen as the next Conservative Party leader and UK Prime Minister on September 5th. On September 8th, Queen Elizabeth II died at her home Balmoral Castle after 70 years as Queen. Her eldest son became King Charles III. Massive protests began across Iran on September 17th over the treatment of women, triggered by the death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old who died after being arrested by the country's morality police. On September 19th, the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II was held at Westminster Abbey in London, with at least 500 world leaders in attendance. Vladimir Putin drafted between 300,000 and 1.2 million men to fight for Russia in Ukraine on September 21st, causing demonstrations and protests across the country. A few days later, on September 30th, Putin announced the illegal annexation of 4 Ukrainian provinces: Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, and Zaporizhzhia. October. However, as October began, the Ukrainian military were already defeating Russian forces and forcing them to retreat away from the areas just annexed by Putin. On October 8th, the Kerch Bridge connecting Crimea to Russia was partly blown up, causing major problems for Russia's military in the area. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss resigned on October 20th after just 44 days in office, the shortest UK Prime Minister in history. She was replaced by Rishi Sunak. Italy formed a new coalition government on October 22nd, with Giorgia Meloni, the leader of the far-right Brothers of Italy, becoming the first female Italian Prime Minister. On October 23rd, Chinese President Xi Jinping was confirmed as leader of the Communist Party for another term, coming after he changed laws around term limits for leaders. Elon Musk officially purchased and took over Twitter on October 27th, and immediately began making major changes and laying off employees. After a competitive election, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was elected President of Brazil after defeating President Jair Bolsonaro on October 30th. November. On November 11th, cryptocurrency exchange FTX filed for bankruptcy, leaving thousands of customers out of pocket and billions of dollars missing. The world's population reached 8 billion on November 15th, 11 years after hitting 7 billion. The UN expects we will reach 9 billion in population in 2037. Public protests broke out across China in late November over the government's harsh COVID-19 policies and the deaths of 10 people in an apartment fire in Xinjiang. The results of the UK census were announced on November 29th, revealing that fewer than half of the people in England and Wales currently call themselves Christian. December. On December 6th, Argentine Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner was found guilty of fraud and sentenced to 6 years in prison. On the same day, Donald Trump's company, the Trump Organization, was convicted of tax fraud in New York. Peru experienced a political crisis on December 7th. The president, Pedro Castillo, attempted to dissolve Congress before they could impeach him for corruption. On December 8th, the American basketball star Brittany Griner was exchanged by the US government for Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout, known as the Merchant of Death. New Zealand officially passed the world's first tobacco ban on December 13th, meaning anyone born after 2009 will never be able to buy tobacco. And on December 18th, Lionel Messi led Argentina to victory over France to win the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. So here is today's final thought. A lot happened in 2022, and the events I mentioned today were only a handful out of all of the major international crises and news stories I could have talked about. So please let me know what stories I missed. There were more elections, natural disasters, coups, and much more across the world. And make sure to check out the transcript of this episode. You will find links to full episodes on most of the events of the past year. But what did I miss? What events were the most significant this year? Did you forget about any of the events I mentioned? And what do you think will happen next year? I'd love to know all of your opinions, so please leave comments on Spotify, Instagram, YouTube if you're listening on YouTube, or the blog, the Thinking in English blog. Perfect place to leave a comment. While you're over on the blog, check out some of the other content over there. Go to my YouTube page, Thinking in English podcast, and watch some of the videos we're uploading. We're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers. As I'm uploading this podcast, we are at 989 subscribers. Can we get to 1,000 tomorrow? Please go over to YouTube and subscribe and watch some of the content. We have 2 series currently running on YouTube. We have full audio, where you can listen to the full podcast audio, and there will be subtitles as well. And then there is a read-along version, where you can read the full transcript with images, vocabulary, and grammar points popping up on the screen. So go to YouTube and check out the content. It's great. Head over to my Instagram page as well. We hit 10,000 followers. Can we hit 11,000 by the end of the year? I think you can do it. So go follow me on Instagram and join the Thinking in English Conversation Club. It takes place every Tuesday at 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. UK time. We have our final Conversation Club of the year this Tuesday, so the day after this podcast is being released on Tuesday the 20th, where we're doing an end-of-year quiz. So come and join. And now is the best time to join the Conversation Club. Why? Well, it's the cheapest it will ever be. I currently have a 16% discount running for annual memberships to the Conversation Club. 16%. That is 2 whole months for free. This is the biggest discount I can possibly give on the website. I can't give a bigger discount, it won't let me. And this is the biggest discount I'm ever going to do. So if you've considered joining before, but you weren't sure, join now. It's the cheapest ever. In January, the prices are going to increase. From $5 and $10 tiers, they're going to increase. So please join now. I want as many of you as possible to join the conversation, and let's learn and practice English together. In 2023, we're also going to be launching new conversation clubs on different days and at different times. So join now for the cheaper price, and then in 2023, join the Conversation Club. You can join over on Patreon. Link is in the description. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, slightly different to usual, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.